Hi, my name's Matt Davidson from Seaton Valley Queen Bees in Nelson, and I'm here to talk about vaporisation of oxalic acid in beekeeping in the real world. So this season I've noticed, over my 30 years of beekeeping, I've never seen Varroa as bad as what it has been in the last probably 6 to 8 months in my colonies. In the autumn we put strips in, the recommended required amount, if not more. We ran them for 12 weeks, and at the end of the 12 weeks I was concerned about the state of my hives and the level of PMS, parametric mite syndrome, that was in those hives. And just by chance, Russell Smith from Beequip NZ called and seen me on the 9th of April this year and showed me his new tool for vaporising oxalic acid into beehives. We brought 2 of the machines and subsequently have been around our hives. Over 600 beehives have all had 3 vaporisations now, and have noticed that our mite count is right down to 1 or 2, if not 0, per beehive. And I was staggered to find that 3 days, up to 3 to 4 days after vaporising, I was getting massive mite drops out of my hives that had been treated for up to 12 weeks, which deeply concerned me. As a lot of beekeepers do, you put your strips in the autumn and you rely and have faith on the fact that they're doing their job, and you don't necessarily go back and continue checking them because you believe what you've done is the right thing. Lucky for us, we didn't do that, and we went back and started vaporising them. For the first time in 30 years of beekeeping, I've been bringing hives home that were dead, that were already past it. And I think that we just got onto it just in time with our vaporisers to pull those other hives back and keep them alive. As a beekeeper, I don't like using new tools, and I don't like putting more work on myself. But the reality is, with Varroa, we have to use every tool in the toolbox to combat it. So what I wanted to do today was just go through some practical steps and what I've seen in using the vaporiser, some tools that you should have, or I think you should have, when you're out in the field to make life easier. Like I say, we've vaporised over 600 colonies 3 times each, and we've only had 2 issues whilst we've been vaporising. Both times it was the same issue, and that issue is very easy to fix and rectify out in the field if you've got the right tools with you. So today's about going through what I think some of those tools you should have in your toolbox when you go out. Okay, so I keep all my vaporisation gear in this metal toolbox, just makes it easy for carting around, and I just happen to have it in my shed. So inside the box fits 3 of these 50 calibre ammunition boxes nicely. I use one for keeping all my tools and the containers of acid in, and the other 2 that are in there I use for putting the vaporisers in, which protects them from rolling around on the back of the truck, and also because they are quite hot going between sites, you have no fear of them catching anything on fire or heating up on the back of the ute unnecessarily. So what I wanted to go through was just a couple of quick tools that you really should have when you buy the units to make life a little bit easier out in the field. Like I say, I have had 2 issues, both of them been the same, and that issue has been where I've had too much acid go through and it's blocked the spout on the front of it. It's a very, very easy fix, providing you've got the right tools with you. I've actually undone this, loosened it off with a 9mm ring spanner that I carry with me. And all you need to do is undo that. And then once you've undone it, if you carry with you, in here somewhere I've got it, there's a tiny little drill bit. And just by hand, by putting it into the spout and just winding it by hand is enough to clear out the acid that's built up in there and gone hard. Then by putting that back on, which is only a 5-minute job, and doing it back up, you're away again. But like I say, I've only had to do that twice in the whole time that I've used the vaporiser. So yeah, I carry all those tools with me when I'm out. Also, tin of Vaseline is quite good to keep with you, because the plunger on the top here has a small O-ring around the top, And whenever I've finished using the vaporiser at the end of the day after I've washed it, put a little bit of Vaseline around there just to protect that O-ring so that you don't have to replace it. I've never had to replace mine yet, and it's still in good working order as it is now. But just another thing to have in your toolbox. So they all sit in there together. They'll actually sit in there with the battery on. This is a Makita one. You can get different types with Bosch and Milwaukee and DeWalt batteries, whatever you've got at home. I happen to have all the Makita gear at home already, so I chose the Makita version, obviously. You'll notice on the vaporiser that there's a couple of coloured things on there. First thing's the yellow boot. That's an accessory that goes on there for Beequip supply that you can buy, and highly recommend it. I wouldn't buy another vaporiser without getting the yellow boot that goes on there, because when you do the plunging, quite often you'll get a bit of acid that'll fall down and it falls onto the top of the machine, and just to keep the machine in good order, the boot around the outside catches any of the acid, and at the end of the day tip it upside down, falls out as a powder and looks after it. The other thing what it does do, which I've found, is it extends the life of the unit in relation to the battery life. So you'll get an extra few hives out of each battery, because the heat that's rising through the chamber, the silicon boot is keeping that chamber warmer. So between hives, and particularly between sites when you're travelling, just keeps that heat retention in there. So well worth it. The pink/purple cap that goes on the top is designed for putting a bit of water in. I always carry a bit of water with me, and you want to give it a clean out. Fill this up with water. Turn your vaporiser on. My experience is to take it up to around about 150 degrees Celsius. Turn the vaporiser upside down, put it on, go like that. Make sure you hold that firmly, because at 150 degrees in the chamber you can imagine that it instantly turns to steam, and I've already had this blow off once and hot water come out. So hold that on firm with your hand, the steam will come out the snout and it cleans it out. I do that 3 times consecutively on each machine after I've used the machine for about a week. If I'm using it on a daily basis over a week period, I don't do it every time I get home. I just do it at the end of the week when I've finished my vaporisation. To give you some numbers, we've got 2 vaporisers, and myself and the guy that works with me, we can vaporise round about 300 to 400 hives a day in good going. We run 2 at the moment, but I do intend to buy another vaporiser early in the spring, because when there's 2 of yous, one person can operate 2 vaporisers constantly, going from hive to hive to hive. It takes approximately for us about 1 minute per beehive to vaporise each hive, with a cost at 2 grams per beehive of roughly 1.5 cents per beehive. The plunger itself that goes in the top, here you can adjust it, and you can do doses of 1, 2, 3 and 4 grams per hive. We're finding that 2 grams per hive is any amount enough for the hives that we're running at the moment. If you've got a really strong colony and you want to go up to 4 grams, you can. The 2 gram dose, however, we find with the battery, with a 6 amp hour Makita battery supplied by Beequip, will do approximately 30 odd beehives we're finding out of one battery before we change over. When you first turn the machine on, one of the first things we do when we get to site is to put the battery on, wait for it to stop flashing, and then turn the unit on. We do that first, get the machines hot, wait for them to heat up whilst we're getting all of the rest of the gear ready. Beequip also sell with the units gas masks and the filters that go with it, so if you so choose to wear a mask, then you can do, and they work very effectively. Good little container that it sits in, keeps it clean and tidy without it rolling around on the back of the ute. The other thing that you're going to need when you do it is something like this. We just take a bucket with us with these cloths in it, and normally fill this up with water before we go, and then wring the water out of them so they're all damp. So what that does, when they're nice and wet and damp, they actually sit quite heavy in the entrance of the hive, and they work really effectively for blocking up the hive. What I've got here is a Beequip ventilated baseboard, which we're trialling out at the moment. And you might say, how can you use vaporization in a ventilated baseboard like that? But it actually works really, really well. And it's actually really effective for testing your Varroa loadings once you've done your treatments, whatever those treatments may be. By just putting a bit of core flute in the entrance of the hive, blocks off the ventilation in the bottom of it, putting your rag on the front of it like that on each hive. Your super's obviously on top, and you're ventilating in from the back or the sides. When you put the holes in the hives for putting the vaporizer into, you can, if your risers on your baseboard are high enough, drill the hole through here in the baseboard. However, we've chosen to put ours directly straight into the boxes of the beehive, which we'll show you soon when we do some vaporization. The other really good thing with these ventilated baseboards is that these trays here that BeeQuip also sell, is that whether you're doing treatments with chemical strips or vaporizing, you can slide these in under the hive, which is the same size as your meshed area, and then after 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever it is you choose, you can come back without having to pull a sticky board out of the front of the hive, which the bees, we all know, can get a bit wound up. You can take this out from underneath it, do a mite count on it, have a look at it, see what you've got, give it a quick wipe off and a clean, and put it back in. Our experience we've found with the vaporizing is that the actual most effective or biggest drop that we had was on the third day. Not necessarily the first or second day, but the third day is when we got our biggest mite drops. Okay, what we'll do is just do a quick demonstration of how quick and easy it is to vaporize. Take the plunger out, put it into the acid, put it back into the spout, and hit the plunger. As you can see, there's a lot of vapour that comes out of the end of it, fills the colony up. When you put it in, you'll hear the bees hum in the hive for about 5 or 6 seconds, and then they stop humming and just go back to their normal jobs. Doesn't seem to harm them at all. Takes about 18 odd seconds for 95% of the vapour to come out. One of the main reasons why I'm interested in the InstantVap is, as a queen breeder, our nukes over the summer period and during the season of producing queens, I find it very difficult and costly to put synthetic strips into them. So this season coming, we're going to be doing some experiments with using the InstantVap on treating nukes. And I believe it's going to be very effective because as you can imagine, when you're producing queens, you've got broodless periods within your nukes. So if we can get the timing right in between putting our queen cells in and give them a shot of vapour partway through that season, when we've got a brood break, we're going to get 100% kill rate on our mites in those nukes. The last couple of seasons, we've really noticed that our nukes have been struggling, and we've been getting a number of nukes that have been collapsing during the season through the lack of not having any form of treatment in them during the queen rearing season. So we're hoping that this is going to be a great tool to control the Varroa mites in our queen rearing nukes during the season. If you really wanted to get carried away and catch your queen and put her into a banking cage in your large colonies and leave it for 21 days for the brood cycle to hatch out and then give it a shot of vapour, you would there in turn the same thing, kill 100% of the mites on your bees that are in your colonies. So, one of my other experiences that I've had with dealing with a lot of beekeepers around New Zealand is we've got clients in the North Island that are having the same problem with high Varroa mites, even though their hives have been under treatment with synthetic treatments. Some of those beekeepers have also taken up these machines and found that they've been extremely successful just within one dose of vaporization to drop the mite loadings right back down. The vapour will not affect or kill any of the mites in the capped brood, but what it will do is knock down pretty much 100% of the mites that are on the live bees in the colony. It's extremely soft on the bees. Of all of the hives that we've vaporised, we haven't had a single colony that I would say has gone backwards or been damaged by vaporising, which I was very nervous about when I first got it, because any new chemical that I introduce into my hives, I'm extremely wary as to what that's going to do. But it's actually been the opposite. What I've seen is that after 3 treatments with this, I've found that the bees are a lot better, healthier, look healthier, and a lot more calmer and content. And I believe that that's because they're not getting chewed to pieces by Varroa, so the bees in there are a lot happier. And our colonies, they just look a lot better than what they did after 12 weeks of having synthetic treatments in them. So we intend to carry on using this, and in the springtime we actually intend to do some samples where we're not going to be using any synthetic treatments at all, and only oxalic vaporisation. Because we get round our hives on a weekly basis, we're able to get to them each week and to knock down those mites. Best time of the day I find to do it is you really want the ambient air temperature above 11-12 degrees, so that the bees aren't too tightly clustered, because when the vapour goes in, it's got to get in amongst all of the bees. So you really want to do it when they're starting to warm up a little bit and start to move around in the colony. We were lucky that we got onto ours early and started with this when the ambient temperatures were still up around the 16, 17, 18 degree mark. However, if I had a Varroa problem and heavy loadings right now, even in the middle of winter, I wouldn't hesitate to vaporise my hives immediately when I saw the load's too high in the hive, during the middle of the day when those temperatures warmed up a little bit. And I think you'll find that even with one vaporisation treatment to a hive that's got heavy Varroa loadings in it will make a world of difference versus just leaving it. Hives that I were bringing home were full of honey and just no bees, had died out. The other thing that we've done is you buy the acid in a 20-25 kilo bag. It's the cheapest way to buy it. Just keep it in the rubbish bin here, and just have a metal shovel for putting it into our smaller containers for when we're out in the field. I find that these 2 containers here, believe it or not, will do around about 250 to 300 beehives. So there's no need to take that with us out in the field. These containers here are more than enough. Another must that you've got to have with you is your battery drill, obviously Makita, for putting the holes in the back of your hive when you get to them. The other thing that is quite handy to have with you when you're out and about, we have noticed some of the hives will actually clog up with propolis when you've drilled the hole in the back of the hive. So whilst I'm going along and putting the cloth blockers in the entrance, I also have a T-bar Allen key that's the right size that I poke in the hole in the back, just give it a quick turn to make sure that the propolis is clear, so that when my man comes along with his vaporiser, slides in beautifully and away it goes. Okay, well we're going to head off and go and vaporise a hive now and show you actually how it works in the practical sense. But before we go, one other quick thing that I got put onto this year, nothing to do with vaporisation, which was quite handy. I don't know what you're using in your smoker these days, but bark off the night and gum tree. We have one of those full of bark cut up. Use that in our smokers now. We don't use any sacking in there anymore. With a wad of grass on the top to cool the smoke. Works like a treat. Okay, so here we are with a double full depth colony. Ventilated baseboard on the bottom of it. 7 to 8 frames of brood in the bottom. Pretty much a good box of honey with a scattering of bees up the top. I've already put our core flute in the bottom of it to block the vents in the bottom of it, and just going to drop my rag in the front. I normally get them, screw them around like that, and then put it in the front. Nice and simple. As you can see, don't even need to wear protective clothing. Just by the by, another quick side for beekeepers. Every beekeeper should have one of these. Brought one 2 years ago and I wouldn't go beekeeping without it. Bad back, no good. Right, so as you can see here, I've got a golf tee in this hole down the bottom. It's had a metal insert put into it, which you drill the hole and then tap it in so it's a firm fit with the hammer, and then your spout goes into it like that. And we're just working on that with Russell Smith from Beequip at the moment to see whether that's going to work and stop the wear in the hole, which I've got another one up the top here that I've been using. By putting the hole into the box, you never know whether you're going to hit the end of the frame in the hive or whether you're going to go between the two frames. In this case, as you can see with the golf tee, I've actually hit the frame on the inside. Most of the hives that I've done are like that, and we've found that there's still been no problem with the vaporization going in and hitting the end bar of the frame. It still disperses well within the hive and spreads around. However, like discussed before, if you've got high rises on your baseboards, you could put a hole in the bottom here which is going to alleviate that problem, and then pop your golf tee into it if you wanted to. All of my hives that I've got out there at the moment don't have golf tees in them or any form of blockage, because that hole that's in the back I feel is not going to make a difference to the colony in relation to cooling it down or draft getting into it. There's a lot of hives out there worse off than a 6.5 millimetre hole in the back of it. So yeah, those are just something we're working on at the moment. And if you see when you sit the vaporizer in there, it sits on a bit of an angle, which is quite good, because you'll find that the spout is not contacting the entire metal ring, which can create problems with cooling the snout or the spout down too much and the temperature dropping and creating blockages within the spout, which I talked about before. So once it's in there again, take that out, put it in, pop it back in there and hit the plunger. That vapor's going right throughout the beehive now that you saw before demonstrated. And if you come round to the front, I'll show you here that if you just remove the cloth a bit, you'll see the vapor pouring out the front of the beehive there now. So you can see that there's plenty of vapor going throughout that beehive now. And those bees in there are humming slightly, but certainly it doesn't aggravate them at all. About a minute in the back of the hive and then on to the next one. As you can imagine, if you've got an apiary of 20, 25, 30 colonies, you can just keep going from one to the next to the next. The blockers in the entrance, they recommend to leave them in there for around about 4 to 5 minutes till the vapor's solidified back to a solid again, and then you can take them out, chuck them back in your bucket, and you're off to the next apiary. Simple, quick and effective way to treat your hives. As you can see, I'm not even wearing my veil today, there's no need to, and then out with the machine and away you go. Really, really easy.